Are you looking for your next houseplant that can get quite large without the need of those pesky moss poles? Stick around with me in this video and let's dive into some of the plants that I've experienced will do quite well on just a janky support stick. No moss pole needed. Hi, my name is Memo, this is my channel, Houseplantygoodness, and essentially it's a place where I like to geek out about my big passion. You might be able to see some of it behind me, it's tropical houseplants. So yeah, as I said, I want to show you some plants that I've had in my collection that without the need of moss poles, and I know everybody's just like, you've changed your tune and you've got moss poles and everything. Not true, I still have a lot of plants on janky support sticks, and the ones that are doing well on just a janky support stick, I am still here for it. It means minimal effort on my part, so I wanted to share with you some that I've noticed grow well and grow large without the need for a moss pole. Some of these might be because of the way that they would grow normally in nature. Some of these might still theoretically be obligate climbers, but they seem to do just fine on just a janky support stick, at least in my experience. Granted, it might be my space as well because I do have very high levels of humidity in here and I've got really decent light. But if you've got different experiences with some of these plants, do let us all know down below. My way is not the only way or even the correct way a lot of the times. Let's share that knowledge down below. But without further ado, let's look at the first plant. So this might not come as a shock to some people, but this, and for the people that I swapped with in the London plant swap, this gives you an idea of the plant. So this is the Philodendron sharoniae, yes, correct. And I do love the fact that this old person, when I was talking about this, and I said there's versions of it called goat, and I don't know why it's goat. Maybe it's a goat head, and somebody was just like, stop it, you old person. It means greatest of all time. Yes, I am aware of this, and I don't know why my head did not go there, but that's neither here nor there. This is dum-dum here, yeah? But sharoniae, it is just on a janky support stick. Sorry, what I was talking about before, if you are the person that I swapped with this one, just to give you an idea, these leaves are the first leaves that this plant has put out after I cut it back. So we all know sometimes a plant will kind of skip a beat. Was it the first leaf? Second leaf. First leaf was still sizable, but second leaf already absolutely stonking huge. No need for a moss pole, absolutely none. This plant is doing great. So, and I know this is one that you would always find relatively easily. So this one you might need to look for a bit more. Beautiful, beautiful plant. It's also one of my most consistent growers. I wouldn't necessarily say the fastest grower, but consistent. It doesn't skip a beat, whether it's summer or winter. It does really, really well, and it doesn't need a moss pole. Bonus. The next one I don't have right here to show you. It is up there and I am not moving it because the janky support stick, as with a lot of my plants, it's attached to the shelves. The janky support stick is attached to the shelf because the plant is so top heavy now and huge that it would just topple over. So I will see about putting a picture here. The Philodendron White Princess. Why did that take me so long? Memo needs another coffee today. But yes, White Princess, absolutely zero need for a moss pole. And this is still a plant that will get tall, but hopefully you can see from the picture that I'm showing you here, it can 100% size up without the need of a moss pole, as long as it's got something stable for it to be supported on. And the one thing you do need to remember is that the plant has got very, very thick stems as it grows higher. So it might be a very thin stem at the bottom, that won't get much thicker, but the ones at the top, so very top heavy. So the reason why the specific plant I couldn't bring down is because it was growing up a janky support stick and now it's growing that way away from a janky support stick. So I had to put other janky support sticks. I call it janky scaffolds. I'm sorry, bad dad jokes, but it's funny in my head. That plant will do absolutely fine without a moss pole. So definitely one to consider, especially if you like variegation. I know they were big a while back. People don't necessarily talk about them too much. If gun to my head and I had to choose between a pink princess or a white princess, I would go with a white princess every single time. One of the few plants that I've got in my collection that has got a true lily white variegation, which I love. I did a video recently about plants that are epiphytic or terrestrial, and obviously I'm going to have to mention some terrestrial plants in here before anybody says, and I'm assuming there's been a few people already going, oh, he's showing us philodendrons again. No, I'm showing you other things, not just philodendrons this time. Aglaonema, pictum, Tricolor. And this is a plant that I never, ooh, whilst I drop everything, devil. This is a plant that I wasn't necessarily looking to get because I know that it's a bit temperamental, it has issues for a lot of people, it was obscenely priced, and I know it doesn't grow particularly attractively for everybody, so it will lose some of its lowest leaves relatively quickly. And I think I saw that Claire had this as well from the Jungle Haven recently, so I'm assuming they've come onto the market in force. But I found this at that garden centre that I always talk about, and it was a decent price. I think this was under 2 digits as well, so this was under £10. So you know what, I'm just like, for under £10 for a pictum Tricolor, which used to be obscenely priced, I'm gonna try it. So, but not just this. So think about any form of Aglaonema. Does not need a moss pole. It would, and from what I've seen in pictures, when it does mature, this will appreciate something like a janky support stick because it can get relatively tall. It will lose some of its bottom leaves, so it might get a bit wobbly. At the moment, it's still relatively young, but Aglaonemas are a good choice if you don't want to have something like a moss pole, because generally a lot of the times they are terrestrial. And let's talk Monstera now. Again, I don't have this one here with me. I've got it somewhere else in the house. I'll see if I can put a picture here. And it does do okay. The picture that I'll have is I've put it on a moss pole just because I want to see how much bigger it can get. But I was growing it trailing down the back there, and it was still sizing up in leaves even without a moss pole for a Monstera, which is quite impressive, which is the Monstera siltepecana. Again, a plant that doesn't get an awful lot of love, but it's one that will start to size up even if it doesn't have a moss pole. It just might take a bit longer, and you should see from the picture that I've got here, my one's slowly starting to size up. It was the last couple of cuttings that I took of a plant that I no longer have, so whilst I'm kind of like buzzing away like the fungus gnats. So it is one that will do okay, and it will start to size up slower than most other plants that I'm exhibiting in this video at least, but that doesn't necessarily need a moss pole. Could you give it a moss pole? 100%. Will it maybe make the process move a bit faster? Possibly. I'm not seeing it getting much larger any faster because it's on a moss pole, if that makes sense. But I just want to see, because the benefit that I get with a moss pole with that specific plant is that at some point I can chop it, put it, and start it off from a much bigger size and see how much larger I can get those leaves. But that's just an experiment I'm doing for my own sanity at the moment. But yes, Monstera siltepecana doesn't necessarily need a moss pole, at least in my experience. You might spot a trend in this video that a lot of the plants I might not be able to bring and show you right here. But this is another one that hopefully I'll take a picture from above so you can kind of see what it looks like, because it's on one of the shelves behind there. But I'm not moving that. It's too heavy and it's too large at this particular moment in time. And I have done a review for this plant, and I'll put it at the top there. I think I might have done 2. One which I was slating the plant, and 2 potentially one that I was kind of eating my words, or I might be imagining it again, I don't know, but I've definitely done at least 1 review of this video, of this plant. Wow, I need a coffee. Philodendron Buono does definitely not need a moss pole to get large. I had a challenge to get it going, but that was a different story altogether, and it might have been my specific plant from my specific rooted cutting that I was going from, but that's a different story. Does not need a moss pole to get absolutely ginormous. So really good one to bear in mind, because those leaves, large paddly leaves, again with a decent level of variegation on this one, so much better than the Paraíso Verde. Doesn't grow as fast as the Paraíso Verde, I will say that for a fact. Paraíso Verde is another one that I've got growing up the back there. And I don't think you're going to be able to see it. I'll see if I can add a picture. That one is also not on a moss pole, is just kind of doing its thing and trailing and tipping over. Leaves are getting large, very, very large. And that one just grows like a weed, like an absolute weed. So that is one that will get a lot larger. How about a begonia now? To be fair, I'm showing you a begonia. So this is the Begonia Brevirimosa subspecies Exotica. But any cane begonia, as long as you give it a janky support stick, and this has got multiple janky support sticks, will do absolutely fine, and they do get stinking huge. This is 1 year's worth of growth, and it was down here when I put it. It's not even a full year, actually. I put it at the beginning of the summer. It's now mid-October. Yeah, does not need it. Definitely needs some janky support sticks because the wobble is real on this, and it does not have the strength to keep itself upright. I'm trying to see if there's any little rootlets. I don't know, and I'm surprised. I would love to see how these things grow in nature and how do they get upright by being a cane begonia if they cannot hold their own weight. I don't know, but cane begonias, for the win. They do not need anything like a moss pole, and they can still get huge. And look at the colours on this one. It does not look real. Another type of plant, and I know this is one that not a lot of people are generally comfortable growing, but I would be remiss if I did not tell you about it, is, and again pictures because it's growing amongst the shelves and it's vining everywhere. Anybody who's grown like something like an ivy and you know it gets everywhere and it's very difficult to get rid of it, that is this plant in my space. Pipers. Piper sylvaticum, Piper crocatum, all of the pipers I find in my case, as long as they've got somewhere to vine on, absolutely huge leaves. Start off about this big, and some of the ones that I've got now are about this big. I have done nothing to that plant. I've just kind of let it go wild. It vines around kind of my shelves, doing absolutely great. No need whatsoever for a moss pole. Is it a plant that potentially do even better if it wasn't a moss pole? Possibly. Am I going to give it a moss pole? No. All of these plants, if I can grow them on a janky support sticks and it doesn't have to create moss poles, make sure the moss poles get wetted every time, make sure that the plant isn't then sitting in water. It is still a pain in the... But for some plants I'm willing to do that. For the plants that don't need it, I am 100% not going to give it to them because they will just be as happy on something as simple as a janky support stick. How many times have I said janky support stick in this video? Multiples! And another type of plant, I'm going to give you an example. So this is an Anthurium pinklei, but Anthuriums, even the ones that grow tall, they don't always need something like a moss pole. This one, for instance, for me, does not need a moss pole. The Aglaonema, I think, and I'll put the name at the top there, does not need a moss pole, and it does size up beautifully. Do I need to treat this for mealybugs? 100%, because, yeah, it's this kind of situation of out of sight and out of mind. I kind of let it do its own thing, and sometimes it struggles the mostest when it comes to pests. Well, ooh, potentially some thrips as well on this one. But it's still growing like the clappers. So definitely do not sleep on Anthuriums. I know that a lot of people have always been worried about the fact that they can be quite challenging to grow, but you can get around that relatively easily and still grow a plant that is absolutely sizable and huge without having to worry too much about giving it something like a moss pole, because, as I said, moss poles are lovely, they're great when they work, but they're also a pain in the arse to maintain. I think even the biggest proponents of moss poles will probably agree with me at some point on that, because it's one more thing you need to do, and I know you can do it in a more efficient way, but I know. Anthuriums can get absolutely huge. Not all of them, but they can get absolutely huge even without that need for that moss pole. And you know I wasn't going to finish a video up without mentioning the beast that is behind me and is pretty much the mascot of my channel at this point. Philodendron esmeraldense, and actually Anthurium esmeraldense as well. Absolutely no need for a moss pole. Zero need for a moss pole. This is the newest leaf, just to give you an understanding. You can't even see that, wow. Absolutely huge, does not need a moss pole. That, believe it or not, is just attached to some very sturdy, janky support sticks and the shelving unit behind it. It is one that if I gave it a moss pole, I dread to think how much larger it would be and how much faster it would be. But yeah, this can get absolutely huge. Zero need for a moss pole. Zero need for a moss pole. Janky support stick for the win with this one. 100%. And I know I've mentioned a lot of philodendrons at this point, but I know a lot of us do own quite a few philodendrons, so I'm giving you some ideas if you ever want to add some of these plants to your collection. If you're avid against moss poles, this would be why I'm creating the video. But let's go into some final thoughts actually. Let's finish on a high, which is the Philodendron esmeraldense. Yeah, it's what I was just saying. Moss poles are great, but they're not for everybody. Some people just do not have the time or the willingness to sit there and do that. Some people might just be starting on their journey now and potentially trying to care for a whole bunch of different plants, and the fact that they need to then also like care for the moss pole or a plant within a moss pole can be a bit daunting. It's not that bad, I do promise. But it is one of those things that sometimes it's just easier to shove a plant on a janky support stick and wish for the best. And these ones do really well. And just to point an example of this, and I've mentioned this on a previous video, I have currently got 3 blooms, massive blooms. Is there a 4th one? No, just the 3 blooms, just the 3 blooms on my Philodendron esmeraldense. No moss pole. Granted, I've had it for a few years, but no moss pole. So it is a good thing. You can find plants that are going to be okay, even plants that you might think are kind of obligate climbers that they would definitely desperately need to climb. Some of these will still do completely fine without that moss pole. So yeah, hopefully you've enjoyed. Did any of these surprise you? Let me know down below. And yeah, hopefully you've enjoyed. Hopefully I shall see you here soon. And I truly hope that you have a great rest of your day. Thanks. Bye.